everyone, I'm Ty, and welcome to the channel where film meets fun. I talk about all things cinema, making it challenging and entertaining, and in today's video, I'm back with a part 2 of watching, reviewing, and rating horror movies on Tubi, so you don't have to. But of course, if any movie sticks out to you for my review, then I encourage you to obviously go see these movies for yourself. If you haven't seen part 1, go watch it after this video, and if you haven't seen this video where I watch Hulu original movies, then go watch that one as well. If you have any other genre that I should explore next on Tubi, or even any platform you'd like for me to cover on the channel, then leave a comment below. But all that aside, let's get into the video. Alright, disclaimer, I'll be talking about The Descent Part 2, so if you don't want to get spoiled by the synopsis, then click on this timestamp on the screen starting now. Traumatized and barely able to explain the horror she faced, Sarah emerges from a cave alone and covered in blood. Forced to return with authorities to find her missing friends, she must descend back into the terror she barely escaped. I watched 2009's The Descent Part 2. I talked about the first movie in this video here, but I thought it was pretty meh, not really privy to creature features, and this one was no different. It had cheap jump scares and an unmemorable cast and story. I didn't like Sarah's character, and everyone else just felt there. No one stood out to me other than their stupidity. The fact that the movie relied on jump scares and loud shrills and rumbling noises to sell that it was scary felt lazy. What also felt lazy was utilizing some of the runtime to replay footage from the first movie, like random camera footage, flashbacks, and all of that. The most terrifying part of this film was honestly the lady trapped under the fallen rocks. You couldn't catch me anywhere near that situation. I'm way too claustrophobic for that. Overall, it was safe to say that the British didn't cook with this one. They could have left this in production hell and no one would have cared. And for that reason, I gave this movie a half star out of 5. While hiking, American tourists are brutally attacked by a mysterious creature. As one recovers under the care of a nurse, he begins to undergo unsettling physical and mental changes. I watched 1981's An American Werewolf in London. Maybe I should have avoided the British after that last film. Nothing good was really coming of it, but David and Jack were very likable from the start, and the characters had pretty good chemistry. Some scenes were outlandish in a fun way, especially through David's dreams. They were actually entertaining to watch. As far as transformations go, watching David turn was gnarly. It was grotesque, but also pretty cool looking. It didn't look bad for an 80s movie either. Yeah, it was weird, but sometimes you just have to appreciate weird. The film didn't really do anything new or add much for me when it comes to the subgenre of werewolves, but I will say it made being a werewolf feel like a huge inconvenience. The ending was abrupt, and you know what? I kind of like that. Overall, I'm not usually into werewolves. I'm more of a vampire girly pop myself, but this one wasn't bad. I like the addition of seeing Jack throughout and watching what happened to David as the movie progressed, so for that reason, I gave this movie a 3 out of 5. Salvagers find a passenger ship that vanished in 1962 drifting in the sea and claim it. As they tow it to harbor, strange events trap them aboard, revealing the ship is home to a malevolent creature. I watched 2002's Ghost Ship. The best way I could describe the opening of this film was Final Destination-like, which came out 2 years prior. But a strong opening doesn't mean you're gonna get a good movie. This was yet another movie that relied on jump scares and not so smart cast of characters, constantly putting themselves in dangerous situations that could have easily been avoided if they just minded their business. The editing got really weird during that part where the little girl showed the woman what happened on the ghost ship. It felt like I was watching an MTV music video. It was definitely a choice to compile that whole segment instead of letting the story breathe and develop naturally. It felt like the movie knew it was running out of time, so it just threw that messy sequence at us instead. On top of that, the movie took a bunch of different storytelling routes that just didn't land for me. Yeah, I hated this. It even reminded me of 13 Ghosts, mostly because of the editing, pacing, and of course the random woman with her tatas out in an unnecessarily stupid, spooky scene. because apparently the movie just couldn't function without it. Overall, it was your typical early 2000s horror movie. The script was predictable and the story wasn't anything to write home about. So for that reason, I gave this movie a half star out of 5. An eerie mist engulfs a town as the ghosts of a shipwrecked crew lured to their deaths a century earlier returns to seek revenge on the town. I watched 2005's The Fog. I hadn't watched the 1980s version yet, but I figured I'd get to it eventually. For now, I was focused on this one. Once again, I was met with stupid jump scares and a main cast that felt like it was pulled straight from an after party instead of a casting agency. I don't know about you, but who gets cast usually tells me exactly what kind of movie I'm getting into, and this one was no different. Between the casting and the character archetypes, you could pretty much predict who was dying first and who'd end up being the final girl and or final boy. Overall, I didn't have much to say about this film other than it was completely forgettable with a boring story and characters I didn't care about. This was straight cheeks. I don't know, I can't really fully explain how much I hated this, and for that reason I wish I could give it 0 stars, but I can't, so I had to give it a half star out of 5. A decade after a Valentine's Day disaster killed 5 minors, a killer returns to exact revenge on a new generation of teenagers preparing for their own party. I watched 2009's My Bloody Valentine. Once again, I haven't watched the original 1981 version, but here I was watching the late 2000s remake. I almost wish it had leaned into being a horror comedy because there were moments either in the line delivery or some of the kills that were actually funny. I just couldn't take it seriously for good reason. That said, the kills were fun and disgustingly bloody, and yeah, bloody is in the name, so I'm glad it leaned into that at least. The characters were pretty unmemorable, but at least the acting was a bit more convincing and the story felt a little more palpable and believable. And by palpable, I'm not referring to the full frontal nudity scene. Hollywood's obsession with showing female nudity, but not male nudity, is dumb. If they can justify showing it for women in a raunchy scene, why not keep that same energy across the board? That was my biggest gripe with the film. The scene could have been taken out entirely and it would have done nothing to the plot or the movie, which is how you know it was unnecessary. You'll probably hear that from me a lot, but as far as comparisons go, Rob Zombie's Halloween is still one of the most raunchy movies I've ever seen in horror, so this one could have been worse. I also wasn't sure how the killer was magically teleporting all over town, but it was dumb. You know it's dumb, and I know it's dumb. I'm glad we're on the same page. Overall, it wasn't good, but it was at least tolerable, more tolerable than the last 2 movies I talked about. I still don't like that nudity scene, but the reveal was incredibly obvious as well, something you could see coming from a mile away. And for that reason, I gave this movie a 1 out of 5. A woman moves with her family only to uncover a dark secret behind the town's seemingly flawless women. I watched 1975's The Stepford Wives. So I had watched the 2004 version of this film and reviewed it on Letterboxd, linked down below by the way, but I went into that thinking it was the original. So here I am watching the actual original one. Even though the synopsis was the same, the way this version framed the people, the environment, and especially the script felt completely different. The era it came out in really played into the cultural norms of trad wives and the domestication of women. This one showed the unsettling nature of men in Stepford early on instead of dragging the mystery out for a later reveal like it's done in the remake. I do love a movie that shows more than tells, so I love the subtlety of the characters' micro expressions, sound cues, and even lingering shots. I really did enjoy watching Bobby and Joanna's snooping and relationship unfold throughout the movie. Some of the shot compositions made me pause, and the fuzzy visuals and audio quality actually added to the creepiness. The lighting toward the end was super dark and eerie, and the reveal was just nasty work, and it also ended pretty differently from the remake, which I liked. Overall, I liked the storytelling choices in this one way more than the remake, who's shocked, and for that reason I gave this movie a 3.5 out of 5. When 3 skiers get stuck on a chairlift at a resort closed for a week, they must make life or death decisions that turn out to be even more dangerous than freezing in place. I watched 2010's Frozen. This movie stressed me out not because of what was happening, but because of the script. It felt really rigid, and I couldn't tell if that was due to the line delivery, the cast's chemistry, or both. Visually, it wasn't anything special either, very simple all around. I will say it did a good job in establishing the relationship dynamics, and through that, you could clearly see the archetypes each character fits into. It's weird because dialogue is important, but about 30 minutes in, I was like, damn, these characters talk too much. The more they kept going, the more I started checking out. This is a survival horror film, so yeah, the idea of being stuck on a chairlift is terrifying. I hate the cold and I'm already afraid of heights, so that alone was enough for me. After the first fade to black, I was wondering where the story could even go from there. Like, how much more could they really stretch this out for? Turns out, not that much. We just learned more about the characters I didn't care about in the first place and watched them figure out how to get out of their little trauma bonding situation. Overall, did I feel bad for any of them? Not really. They got themselves into that situation by being dumb. It wasn't the worst movie I have ever seen, but I can admit this probably should have been a short film, and for that reason, I gave this movie a 1.5 out of 5. After a guy leaves for college, his two childhood friends descend into a violent spree as they hunt for a new source of food. I watched 2023's Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Is it even worth doing a semi in depth review of this movie? I don't think so. This felt like one of those films that's just incredibly hard to describe in terms of how bad it actually is. I genuinely have no words. You could either go watch it for yourself to believe the bad reviews, or just don't and believe the bad reviews. There's nothing to see here, no FOMO, just trust the reviews. Overall, if you know, you know. And for that reason, I gave this movie a half star out of 5. And that's it. We've been on quite a journey. I would love to hear from you what you would want me to watch, rate, and review on this channel. But until then, don't forget to like and subscribe to see another one of my videos, and I'll see you in the next one.